Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to In Truth and in Spirit Well of Worship Fellowship. Today is the 20th of October, 2025. My name is Peter Calveland, Servideo moderator tonight. And today's topic is such a controversial one, and it will demand all of us to turn on their theological antennas and open-mindedness. Without Israel, does or did the world have God? Does the world have God? Did the world have God without Israel? The conversations of the people and the God of the Bible canon present controversial views on the universality of God. One cannot overlook asking whether this God was or is also the same God present in Africa or the rest of the world. For example, if this God is the same God who is present in Israel and with the Israelites, if he's been the very God who is everywhere in the world that he created or she created, how come he drowns the Israelite, rather he drowns the Egyptians and redeems the Israelites? So that's what we want to debate today. We would like to get into conversation with that. Because the discourses of the Bible seem to insinuate that the God, or the God we've believed, who created the heavens and the earth, is somehow a tribal God. And without, in other words, we are at the mercy of the Israelites or at the mercy of the Arabs, so that without their God, then the rest of the world does not have a God. I shall begin with the Old Testament passages. There are so many passages that we can reference, but I'll only begin with these two passages, and I shall read them. The first is Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 6. And if you go to the Quran, you go to Al-Baqarah. Al-Baqarah is the second chapter of the Quran, verse 47 and verse 122. They speak just like Deuteronomy 7:6 speaks. And I shall read Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 6. I'm reading from the RSV, Revised Standard Version. It says, "For you have a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for his own possession out of all the peoples that are on the face of the earth." Now that is Deuteronomy 7:6. It seems to say straightforward that out of all the peoples of the world, out of all the races of the world, human races, God has chosen exclusively the Israelites. So when somebody argues that this is a universal God, whatsoever argument they use, one wonders what happens to the unchosen. Are we at their mercy? So we are at the mercy of the chosen ones. And every time we want to refer to God, we must run to Israel. We cannot speak about God independent of Israel. Without Israelites, we are godless. So it seems. We don't know yet, but we shall establish. After that, I would like us to go to 2 Samuel. And we're only looking at those two verses. There are so many others. 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 23. Should be verse 23 or 22. 722. All right, 723, 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 23 says, "What other nation on earth is like thy people Israel, whom God went to redeem to be his people, making himself a name and doing for them great and terrible things by driving out before his people a nation and its gods gods. So we have a God who has a people, while the rest of his people, I don't know whether they're his people, have gods. So we wonder, has this God been the God even to the rest of the nations? We would like to debate that. And we would like to begin with the Old Testament canon. And then later on, we shall come back to the New Testament canon. I would like to invite our discussants to first deal with the Old Testament passages before we turn to the New Testament passages. According to what we've heard from Deuteronomy 7:6 and Surah Al-Baqarah 47 and 122 and 2 Samuel 7:23, does this God sound as one who has ever been present in Uganda society, Ankole society, Alul society, Indian society, Kenyan society? Does this God sound to have been present there, or even ever bothered to reveal himself or herself to your ancestors, you a non-Israelite? Those are the questions we would like us to go deep into. We shall turn to the New Testament later, but now I would like to invite able Christian biblical theologians to clarify these texts or passages, putting them into context and showing us whether this God revealed in the two discourses and amongst others is the God of everyone, to tell us whether we who are non-Israelites are also chosen, okay, before we go to the New Testament, and why we should pay allegiance to such a God in the New Testament, and while this God was doing all that we have seen in the Old Testament, what was he doing elsewhere, and where is the evidence for that? Was it redeeming the Banyarwanda at that time? Was he busy delivering the Indians at that time, or he was busy being exclusive and playing partisan politics at the altar or at the sacrifice of the rest of the human race? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I would like now to invite you to have your say, and I'll begin with Reverend Raymond. Reverend, what do you have to say in light of those two passages amongst the many passages in the Old Testament canon? Reverend Raymond, this is your time.
Anyway, good evening, everyone. This is an important question, and it has very many undertones in regards to whether the God of the Bible, is an ethnic deity. So by Israel, we are probably thinking about an ethnic group, a people group. But it would be so if it were the Israelites telling us about this God. So if it was the Israelites making the statement about God, you notice that it is not them, it is God making a statement about the Israelites. I hope that is a very distinct matter to notice, that it is not the Israelites talking about their God, but it is God saying that he chose these particular people on all the face of the earth. So
forgive me to interrupt. Reverend
yes,
Raymond.
Sir. Yes, sir. It's okay.
What makes you at most certain that it is God speaking? It is not God made to speak by the authors.
At first, I'm going to take the statement as it is.
What draws you to that conclusion?
Yeah, I want to take the statement as it is before I give it any other meaning.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I think that should be allowed. When you're reading literature, you first receive it, then you find other grounds to assume or to imagine any other meaning. For now, It is not the Israelites speaking. That statement seems to me to be coming from God, or at least the God in subject. If we can agree on that, then I want to take that as, I mean, yes, the Israelites are not the ones saying, we have a God, you are our God. No, it is God saying, I chose you among the peoples of the earth. And then we have to see that that statement is saying that this God is not oblivious. He's not unaware of the rest of the peoples of the earth, but rather very aware, very, very aware. And he's making this statement, acknowledging that the rest exist. He does not say that I have rejected them by choosing you. No, he has a purpose for choosing this particular group of people. And the choosing also has an origin. So in Genesis chapter 1, we don't hear of Israel, but from Genesis chapter 12, rather, we hear a calling of Abraham, from which this nation called Israel now comes as a promise to Abraham, who is said to have obeyed God, trusted him, and made a very serious decision, responding to God's call to go from his people and start a new life with God. And God, I'm using the literature as is. Now, if we get into the whole idea of he can't be the same God of the Baganda. There are many reasons why I think he's the God of the universe rather than of any tribe. And you could use anything, but I look to the fact that while the Israelites might be different, the Jews may be different in terms of skin color and language and many other things. They seem to be as human as the Baganda. Forget about language and ethnicity. They seem to have everything in terms of nature of humanity. And so primarily, he's the God of creator of humanity rather than of ethnicity. So if we try to narrow down to ethnicity, no other deity has made a claim on creation. Even the God of any tribe, any ethnic group that you might want to bring out has not made a claim on creation. And so I would want to begin by saying, well, if any of them wants to make a claim, they are late. At least they are late. There's a God that has made that claim on creation as the creator of not only humanity, but of all the universe. I would go on and on, but first of all, I want to first clarify that it is not the Israelites telling us about this God. Hence, he's not the God of Israelites. Okay, it is God telling us about his choice or his choosing of the Israelites as a people group special for a purpose. And now we can discuss that purpose if we are to discuss the rest of humanity, okay? Because in that purpose includes the rest of humanity. That purpose includes the rest of humanity. And why he didn't begin from Uganda or Russia, that is his own question to answer, not mine. But I can use his word or the literature I have also to answer that one later. We can hear from others. For start, I wanted to clarify that this is not Israelites talking, it is God talking. You want to argue with that? Please do. Then, in that choosing of the Israelites as a special people, it is not rejection of the rest of the world, but there is intention even before we know Israel. There is intention in Genesis 12, 1-3, to make Israel, or the descendants of Abraham, whom God calls and responds, to make a nation that would be a blessing to the rest of the world. Hence, God is not withholding himself to the rest of the world. He is aware of the rest of the world, which Abraham doesn't know about. meaning that this God is taking Abraham to the rest of the world, not Abraham taking God to the rest of the world. So the idea that without Israel, we don't have God, I find it false or problematic, because it is without God we don't have Israel. Without God moving Israel to the rest of the world to know the world and make God known to the rest of the world, we can't know about this Israel. I hope I've not made it complicated. I'm trying to not, I hope I've not. Is that helpful for starters?
Okay. Okay. Yes. Your main point has been that it is God who says it. I don't know whether
the statement we're analyzing is not an ethnic group statement. It is God making the statement.
Okay. One wonders who spoke first, because
that is secondary. Yes.
Yeah, because we are looking at 2 Samuel 7:23.
Yes.
And it is not God saying that. It is the Israelites saying that. But the
Al-Baqarah you quoted, and yes,
in
okay,
Deuteronomy,
go on.
Yeah, in Deuteronomy 7:6, still it is a report that God said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if it is a report, then it is a report. It is someone reporting on behalf of God, sent on behalf of God. It's equally in Samuel. That's the thing. Yeah. A messenger. Yes.
Okay. All right. So, Reverend, while this God is doing all that with the Israelites, what is he doing at that very time with the rest of the world? I mean,
sustaining it, keeping everybody alive, sustaining it, keeping everybody alive, being gracious to them. Many things. He's doing everything basically. And what he's doing with Israel is for them. It's important for them. They do not know, but that's okay. And I think it is where we would later look into the very text that there's a time of ignorance. So they're ignorant of him. It doesn't exist. It doesn't mean he does not exist. Ignorance of him doesn't mean he's in existence. So the times of ignorance he has overlooked. Acts 17, 30, 31. Even the people very close to Israel didn't know about him, but they would later get to know him. And the story all works together when you see when he is incarnate and living amongst humanity in flesh. He tells those who listen to him, who are no longer just Jews but everybody, and says, "Go tell everybody, go make disciples of all creation, of all nations." By that, and actually the actual translation of all peoples, make disciples, don't tell people about me, from here to the next city, to the next nation, to the next region, to all over the world, to the ends of the earth, which they don't know about, but he knows because he created them.
Yes, as you pleaders and arbitrators of this God,
yes,
one wonders whether it was only the Israelites in Egypt, or it was only Israelites in the bondage of slavery at that time. One wonders whether they were the only enslaved nation. And we don't have a history. We don't have any history of this God doing that to any other person, to any other nation. And don't you think that is discriminatory and segregative? Is this God universal?
No, it's not.
Why should we? Because just a minute.
Yes, please.
Just a minute.
Go for it.
Yeah. Thank you. Because in as much as that happened many years before Christ, we have slavery in Africa that comes almost 1,000 years later, and we don't see if this God, the God of the Israelites, if he's the God of the whole world, we don't see this God come down to redeem Africans, our ancestors, from slavery, from the bondage of slavery. Is that God? Does that God care? And does that God represent the entire humanity? Is he a caring God to the rest of the humanity? Because we never saw him when our ancestors were being taken or chained to the United States. Where was he?
He was there, actually. That is a complicated conversation. And that, I think, if you are going to use that, first of all, the children of Israel are his children even before they get into slavery. So one of the things you need to acknowledge is that his own children get into slavery when he's their God. He doesn't become their God after they're in slavery and then after rescuing them. So that's one thing. But when you get into the slavery in Africa, what you'd call the transatlantic and that slave trade that we saw, that one is complicated because you cannot not say that God does not play a part in stopping it. What you need to acknowledge is the human responsibility involved in it. However, I want to consider that question, that particular angle, secondary in this discussion. Why? Because, first of all, we need to understand when God is doing something, we need to appreciate that he has the right in his sovereignty to start it from wherever he chooses. What does that mean? He has the right to start the River Nile from Uganda and not from America, and not from Russia, and not from India. He has the right as God. He has the right to put the tallest mountain in Africa and not, or in America, not in Oceania, not in Australia. He has that right in his sovereign wisdom and power and everything, knowledge. He has that. So should he choose to call Abraham, and Abraham responds, and he makes that promise to him, and from him, he rolls out his plan for the whole world. He has that right. You know, let me use a human example, in as much as it is limited, inadequate. When Museveni claims to have saved Uganda out of dictatorship, blah blah, he didn't begin in Karamoja or Chisoro or Toro. He didn't begin in any of those places. He had a place he began. And it's okay. We can understand that even in a human context. Why? Because we understand that there's always a beginning to everything. This story gets beautiful because then we can follow it. We can all track it. If it was spontaneous happening, he's saving here, saving there, and we don't know. We will just make up our ideas of what could have saved us wherever, anywhere, or together. But it gives us a story. And let me conclude by saying, all the years of ignorance, if there were people who did not know him the way we know him in the past, and genuinely they did not know him, it is okay with him. He's a God of justice. Okay. He knows those who did know him then. But now, Muganda wange, olwaleero Muganda wange, tokkirizibwa gamba ntomanyi. Anyway, ojja kukomawo ng'okomyewo. Tokkirizibwa kwekwasa simumanyi, simuwuliranga nedda ssebo.
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Reverend Raymond. Thank you very much for always being here, being present, and deliberating in a Christian manner, in a manner that wants to be consistent to the Bible text. Thank you very much. Before I call upon another theologian to have their say, I would like to invite some other members before. Sharif Muhanguzi, do you have anything to say? My question is, thank you. Trutangaza, please stay with us. Are you leaving?
Oh, it's
all right. Okay, anyway, thank you very much. Sharif Muhanguzi, are you there? Sharif, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, I'm afraid I can't get through to Muhanguzi. Let me go to the American resident here, the Trumpist, Enoch Muyanjak. Are you there? Kale so.
I've just joined in, so I was trying to follow, but if you can clarify a bit, or let me wait for one more person to speak, maybe I'll follow up. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, we're still asking whether this God, whereas he was busy revealing himself amongst a certain tribe called the Israelites or the Jews, what was he doing elsewhere? I mean, he was busy redeeming the Israelites from Egypt. Do the historians seem to say that only the Israelites at that time were in bondage of slavery? And in fact, if they were, how about the Egyptians who were being oppressed by the Pharaohic administration? Weren't also they? Were they not also suffering from slavery? But anyway, the grand question is this God of Israel the God of elsewhere? I mean, if he's busy choosing the Israelites, all right, busy revealing himself or herself amongst them, was he doing that simultaneously to the rest of the world? That's what we're bothered, because the text we have just read, Deuteronomy 7:6 and 2 Samuel 7:23 and Surat Al-Baqarah, which is the Quran, have confirmed that these were a special kind. God was busy revealing himself while we had gods. According to 2 Samuel, while we had gods, they had the God. So what was the God doing to the rest, if he's not an exclusivist, an ethnicist, and a tribalist? Aryong Opio, please come have your say.
My background is a little noisy because I'm driving on the bumpy road.
Yes, please.
I hope you are hearing me.
Yes, at least loud and clear.
Yeah. A God who says he saved the Israelites from bondage in Egypt, and he cannot save the Palestinians now from Israel, and didn't save Africans from slavery, can't claim to be a universal God. Secondly, if the only source of this God is the Bible, then it's exclusive, and this God is only for a certain community and a certain people, not a universal God. Here in Africa, we have a plethora of gods. Before this God came with the colonialists to colonize us. This is the colonialist God who came with Gehenna, who came with hell, threatening a revolt from those enslaved, that if you did revolt, then you'll burn in hell. This God cannot claim to be a universal God. Here in Uganda, for instance, we have Mwanga, we have Tonda, we have Ulamu. All those are gods. And then a God who says, I am the God, I am a God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, can never convince me and can never claim to be my God, because my great grandfathers are Oila, Manu, and Omron. So a God who only comes to me through this book called the Bible or the Quran is a God of only those who can read and write, and only those who can be able to interpret and decode information from the Bible and the Quran. Because you the moderator, Peter, you should have given us a variety of sources other than sourcing from the Bible and the Quran alone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I ran short of sources because this God does not to seem to have been well represented in the rest of the races, and I think we must not marvel about that because he chose to reveal himself to one tribe, so we don't have any substantive record like we do have with those he did reveal himself to. That's why we run to Israel for Mukisa. We run to Israel to find a God, which God has no substantive record, historical record in the rest of the races. Yes, before I bring, do we have any other person before I bring the second theologian to have to clarify these passages?
Yeah. So
yes, Enoch, Mianja.
Yes. So I'll just make a quick one and my thoughts. I just think, as you said, I think the Israelites and the rest of the God there, we see him presented, well documented. I also believe when you go to Japan, when you go to India, when you go to these other places of the world, they have a certain understanding of who this God is in their own way, you know? So it's just that maybe is the way he's documented within the Israel nation is unique and is chronological and it's appealing or something like that. But God, the God who is all over, who was here, the one we called Mukasa of the air, is the same God we see of Israel. I don't think, it's just that he revealed himself to us in a different format, and Israel is also presenting him as in a certain way the God of their forefathers. But it's the same God who the rest of the world is also know but understand differently. That is what I can say for now.
Thank you very much. Pastor White, Pastor White being a theologian, you being a theologian, and at the same time a scholar whom I know very well, you very well know that when we are developing a bibliography or a list of references in research, we cross-source every concept or term that we want to debate. For example, if you want to talk about the church, they will say, according to so-and-so in 1988, according to so-and-so in 1800, according to so-and-so, 16 so-and-so. We can reference from Japan, we can reference from Africa, we can reference from United States, from United Kingdom, but that isn't so with this God of the Bible you teach. So Pastor White, from that background and your theological understanding, how come you would say that this God is a universal God, as you claim in biblical and Christian theology, yet we only have one developed source of literature from which we can reference? How do you say that? How would you explain that? Of course, with the background of Deuteronomy 7 and 2 Samuel 7. Pastor White?
Well, good evening, everyone. Praise God. It's good to be here, and I want to start with your first question of sourcing. And the Bible as a literature book has not denied or even disassociated itself with the surrounding literature of its environment, where it was born. It is for that reason that we see narratives in the Bible that have got contemporaries that almost are the same in the ancient Near East. That's where we have the stories like of the creation account of in the Numa Elish. That's the Babylonian account. And also we have the Jewish creation account. So it is important to understand that the peculiarity of the Bible is not entirely in vacuum, and neither is it exclusive of its world. And that is what distinguishes this book, the Bible, from the Quran, because as far as the Muslims are concerned, the Quran fell from heaven, but the Bible was birthed by cultures and surrounding sociologies from where it was born.
Isaiah, sorry to interrupt. Did you say the Islamists believe the Quran fell from heaven?
Yeah, it was written by Allah and was given to them. It fell from heaven.
Okay. Yes, Pastor White, in your submission, thank you very much. In your submission, you have emphasized of its time, of its environment, in its sociology. Why?
Because I was trying to demonstrate that it reflects its sources, therefore, and of its time, of its people, of its environment. That is the question that we are asking of according to.
Okay.
So I was responding to that first question, and I hope I have communicated to that question.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Don't you wouldn't somebody call it a short-sighted bibliography? Because I mean, it is only within the ancient Near East. Can't we have the farthest east? Can't we have the west? Can't we have farthest as far as Africa and so on? What would you say about that?
Well, as a university professor, you really understand that no bibliography can cover at a universal level. Every bibliography covers to the effect of the subject matter. So you can only challenge the short-sightedness of the Bible if the subject matter was actually not covered representatively, even beyond the ancient Near East. But if it was, then its bibliography and its coverage can be justified as far as the topic and the subject matter is addressed. Every research has got a problem statement, and if the problem statement of the Bible is clear and even represented in China, then it is justified regardless of its scope.
For example, for example, the phenomenon, the historical phenomenon of enslavement of the Israelites. One would wonder why we don't have some cross references of enslavement beyond Israelites. Do you want to tell us that according to this Bible discourse, only the Israelites at that time were suffering from enslavement?
Yeah, I like the fact that you have even actually called it by its right name, the discourse. Okay, so the discourse of the Israelites in Egypt is not about slavery. No, it's about redemption. And the God who redeemed them from Egypt, not merely from Egypt, but from the gods of Egypt. So that is the discourse of enslavement. So that's what the Bible is talking about. It's not talking about slavery. Otherwise, slavery is scattered all over, and literally it is not a good thing. The Americans fought it, and all other countries were fighting slavery at that point. But the discourse of the Bible, as far as that example that you've cited is concerned, is not about slavery. No, it is about the God who redeems them from the enslaving gods of Egypt. Now
when you say
that can be representative in almost all cultures of the world, because as you may know, given the civilizations all over the world, it was always the gods that saved their people from their problems, and it is the gods that blessed their people with blessings, and it is the gods that punished their people when they rebelled or disobeyed those gods. So that is the discourse. That is the problem statement that the Bible actually addresses, and you should read it from those lenses if you are to appreciate it.
According to 2 Samuel chapter 7 verses 23, the speaker makes mention of that historical phenomenon in their ancestral history, that this God redeemed them from the bondage of slavery. And at that time, he's speaking this, probably thousands of years have passed. As a theologian and also an archaeologist through this discourse, what would a Mnyarwanda record the history about the same God at the same time? Would a Mnyarwanda or a Mrundi have this history just like an Israelite is doing?
Now that takes me to the topic. To the topic, I guess.
Okay.
You see, for me, this discussion and the question of our discussion, I need to find it again and look through it and see. Without Israel, did the world have God? Is that the question for the discussion?
Perfect.
Okay, brilliant. And then later on you ask, does this God sound as one who has ever been present in your society or even ever bothered to reveal himself or herself to your ancestors? You, a non-Israelite. That is the question. Now, moderator, one of the things that we need to understand in this discussion, and I need to warn myself and those who might think like I'm thinking right now, is that we must be very categorical in what we are talking about. Are we talking about gods, or we are talking about God?
We are talking about God. Has the world, yes, without Israel, does the world have God?
Now, when the question says that without Israel, does the world have God? The assumption is that God is exclusive to Israelites, and therefore it is an Israelite-made God, or an Israelite-introduced God, or an Israelite-comprehended God, and that is an exclusive comprehension. So it is an Israelite God. That is the assumption that the question makes. And the challenge from me to that is it true that without Israel, there is no God?
Good.
And therefore saying, is God therefore Israel, or is he an Israelite God? Because these are deductions from the same question.
Good.
That very question, God and Israel are one and the same. Now, for me, if you put it that way, you are not talking about God. You are talking about a God. And the two and the two are entirely different. So God and a God. All right. So first and foremost, all people all over the world had gods. All right. They had gods. Now, if you're like myself and you believe there is God or the God, if you believe that there is that one God, isn't it? Then you will agree with me that that very God has never begun, has always been, unlike the gods. So it is important that we distinguish gods and God. There has always been God. And ever since humanity attempted relating with that God, the process has given birth to gods. So when you go back to our ancestors, at that level of primitive civilizations and understandings, you will see many gods that actually had roles. And for that matter, Israel is not excluded. So for me, I have issues with this topic because
so are you saying that when we talk of Israel and God, is it possible that the Israelitic discourse is a God issue, not God issue?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you saying, for purposes of clarity and on record, Pastor White, are you saying that the God whom we hear in Deuteronomy 7 and the God whom we hear in 2 Samuel 7, amongst other passages littered all over the Old Testament canon, are you saying it is possible that we are not talking of the God, but a God?
You see, what you see in Deuteronomy and Samuel, and even in other places of scriptures and verses of election and chosenness of Israel, is not different from all other cultures about their gods.
Oh,
that is what every culture believed about their God. Their God had chosen them, and they were a special entity to that God.
Their God.
Yes, it was their God. And we should not castigate Israelites. They have committed no crime by indicating that they are a people of Yahweh, and Yahweh has chosen them against all other nations. And that is why, for you to worship Yahweh, they have to process you, okay, through the traditions of circumcision, of shaving, so that you can be able to worship this God. And if you are not born a Jew or an Israelite, there is a court for you where you can worship. You are a convert to this God, their God. So that's why those who are Gentiles, we are worshiping in that yard after the circumcision and after all the rituals exercised on them, so that the God of Israelites can accept you who is not an Israelite, but you have subscribed to that. That is not different from you, the Baganda people. When you went into a shrine in Buganda here, and you are not a Muganda, the Mayembe, isn't it, could either beat you up and chase you away, or they could ask you extra sacrifices so that they can work on you. Why? And the justification was that they had to fight your ancestral Mayembe, which are not there, your kind. That's why it was advisable here in the African traditional religion that you go to a shrine doctor. I don't want to call him a witch doctor. To a shrine doctor of your ethnic group, because gods were ethnic at that primitive level of understanding.
I would like you to pause here, Pastor White, and invite the rest of the house if we have any comments of her before we proceed. Yes, just hold it there. Yes, from the rest of the house, do you have any questions, any follow-up questions? We need to know or to establish whether you've been following and we're not alone in a dialogue. Yes, are we following the conversation? If you have any follow-up question or any comment, please feel free. Omuchwezi Rutembana. Dave, Prince, Wasaja.
So I am steadily following.
Okay. Don't you have any comments or any follow-up questions or any inquiries for clarification?
Not as yet.
Oh, great. Perfect. Okay.
Yes,
Perfect.
moderator.
Yes, Aryong?
Yeah, I have brought Pastor Isaiah. So if the issue is of Israel is God.
Sorry, your network is bumpy.
Yeah, what I'm saying, Isaiah is telling us that God is, was, is, and will be.
Okay.
But every ethnic group, every tribe has its own deities. Like we have Ebeke in Iteso, we have Manga here, and whatever you call it. The question is, how come Isaiah, who understands that, insists on telling us about the God or God using an Israeli name like Jesus and using the Bible as a source? Thank you.
Yes, Pastor White, it's yours to reply, please.
Okay. And do you people remember when I was talking to Selvid about the discourse and the problem statement?
Yeah, probably it was deeply scholarly terminology. We might have left our audience behind. Could you help us break it down for them, please?
Okay. Now, the reason as to why I insist on using this book, it is because this book known as the Bible, all right, has outlined the problem, okay, and the solution to that problem. In other words, this book is an illustration of a proper worldview that challenges all previously existing worldviews. I'll give you I'll explain further. Now, and still let me use the Israelites so that I get now to the question of Arion, which I had addressed earlier, but now I'm going to address it in a very simplistic manner. I hope it will be simplistic again. Now, the reason as to why you do not have to be obsessed with Israel and the Israelite God is because even right now, today as I speak, the Jews in Israel and Palestine do not believe the man you call Jesus Christ to have been God incarnate. So at that level alone, the Judaism that we struggle with throughout the Old Testament, okay, disagrees with the New Testament Jesus of Nazareth. Number one. Number two, even in the Old Testament, Judaism is going to fight a new God that claims to be Yahweh, but changes now the position of Yahweh. Now, that is why we have the event of the exile. Theologians will tell you that the exile is a very big motif because it universalizes Yahweh, and yet Yahweh was a local God. Some prophets actually are going to fight fellow prophets. There is no way Yahweh can be with the uncircumcised and be the one beating us up and chaining us up and taking us into exile. But other the wilderness prophets, or what we call the Deutero prophets, other wilderness prophets like Jeremiah and Deutero Isaiah are insisting that this is Yahweh and this is what he has always wanted and this is who he has always been. We have misunderstood him. We have now to go to exile because that is where he is. He's not only here in Israel, he's everywhere. That's the exile motif. And it's very important for you when you're studying the Old Testament to understand that Israelites are going to die resisting and being against that. Now, those prophets who are exclusive are going to esteem this Yahweh to be in chains when Nebuchadnezzar takes over and takes the entire kingdom into exile. It is Yahweh in chains. And they cannot believe that the gods of Babylon have taken over. On the other hand, these other prophets like Jeremiah and Deutero Isaiah are telling their people and Micah that it is not Yahweh in chain. It is Yahweh himself in charge. Now you can start from there to begin understanding. When Israel said that, thus says God, what God are they talking about? That's what you need to investigate in the Old Testament. What God are they talking about? Okay, now I have not taken you through the name Yahweh itself and which kind of God Yahweh was. I don't want to tire you with all that. I have discussed these things previously. But for now, I want you to understand that even in the Old Testament, there is a contention on Yahweh. Whether we have understood this Yahweh or we have misunderstood him. And it is the exile that explodes everything. It is like Yahweh breaks the locality and now goes universal. And the Israelites cannot believe that. And Judaism is stuck in that. It is for that very reason that even after that intertestamental period and when we get into the New Testament, these Jewish sects like the Pharisees, the Essenes, the Qumran community where John the Baptist comes from, are still waiting for that particular Yahweh of Israel, the exclusive Yahweh. And lo and behold, a Messiah comes on stage who is not exclusive but inclusive. Now there's a problem. They still reject that inclusive God. And they insist on an exclusive God. Now the question to modern readers like you and myself is, do you worship an inclusive God or you worship an exclusive God? I suggest and I insist that the God who created the universe is an inclusive God. He's not a local God. He's not an ethnic God.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor White. Yes, thank you, theologian, for that.
I had not gotten to the question.
Okay. Please proceed. Let's proceed.
Omusajja tebamukkiriza kunnyonnyola kibuuzo n'omuwa ebirala n'asooka abiddamu kati adde ku kibuuzo.
Because I was giving a background to this Yahweh so that people get to understand. Because Ariongas asked me that question. Now, why do I use the Bible? Because of what I said earlier on. The Bible is a discourse about how the God, the universal God, the one who never began, isn't it? How he has been laboring to reveal himself to all cultures all over the world, and how he has been misunderstood and misrepresented. Just like the Jews, Judaism, misrepresented that very God in their exclusivity and exclusivism, so did all other cultures all over misrepresent the same God in their teachings and religions. For example, you are a Muganda, you the moderator, and the Baganda here. You do understand that in the pantheon of gods that you have, there is that one God, that one inexplainable God. You go and ask the Baganda religion. They still see a power above all these other gods. They know that each and every task in the community has a God, but there is that supreme God above all these other gods. That one is the very one that actually, it is the same thing that Paul found in the Greeks. In Acts chapter 17, the God of this, the God of this, the God of this, the God of this. And then the Greeks said, but there is this altar of the unknown God. Of the unknown God. It is for this one,
the distant one.
The distant one. It is that very God that has always been trying to reveal himself through all cultures, and who have rejected him for these small gods. Now, the reason as why we insist on this book, the Bible, okay, it is because it is a document, it is a discourse of how this very God has been laboring to reveal himself, even with us, the Banyankole, the Banyarwanda, the Banyoro. This very God, had, what he was doing in Israel, he was doing with the Banyoro. And like the Israelites misunderstood him and misrepresented him, so we have. Therefore, this discourse helps us tell that story, how we have done that. And this is why I insist, moderator, everyone should go back where they are born and start investigating their theology. And once you investigate your theology, your ethnic theology, how your ancestors understood God and the gods, you will agree with what the Bible is recording. The struggles that the Israelites went through are the very same struggles that you guys went through. This is why I normally tell people that the missionaries, they never brought here God. There was God here. They brought a religion. We had only misunderstood the revelation of God. And this is why we insist that we need to go back to the revelation of God. Why? Because of the 4 worldview questions. At least Israelites agree with the Bakonzo agree with the Chinese. Number 1, where did everything come from? The question of origin. All cultures all over want to know that. Number 2, what is the problem? How you answer that, the Bible has a challenge for you. Number 3, what is the solution? Number 4, where does this all end? You go and ask all your ethnic theological conclusions. Ask those 4 questions, and you see how they respond to those questions. Come back to the Bible and see how the Bible responds to those questions, and then decide which one makes sense.
Thank you, Pastor White. That has been the first part. Part A has been the Old Testament passages. I would like to turn to the New Testament passages where we have two cardinal characters at the center of the New Testament discourse. That is Jesus of Nazareth and Paul of Tarsus. And I'll begin with Matthew chapter 15, verse 24. Jesus of Nazareth has this to say. Matthew 15, 24. Cross-reference also, I think, is also Matthew 10, 6 and 23. I shall read. It says, Matthew 15, 24, it says, he answered, this is Jesus of Nazareth answering, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. All right, that is Matthew 15, 24. I go to John 4, 22, the woman at the well, where we get our lead text as in truth and in spirit well of worship fellowship. And I'm reading verse 22, John 4. Please ensure you're following. John 4, 22. I began with Matthew 15, 24. I've gone to John 4, 22, and I'm quoting verbatim according to the translation. Theologians will tell us whether this was verbatim or not. So after having read 15:24 of Matthew, now I'm reading John 4:22. It says, you worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. Salvation is from the Jews. And the Jews worship what they know, while we, the non-Jews, worship what we do not know. For salvation is not from the Baganda, it's not from the Banyarwanda, it is from the Jews and not from the Indians. What a universal God. We want to go to Ephesians 2. Please follow me as I posted those texts, but I'm reading. I want to read them. We've proceeded to Paul, Ephesians. I'm opening my hard copy here. Still a traditional. Pastor White has always had a bone to pick with me, that I waste their time into a traditional approach. Yes, I'm reading Ephesians chapter 2, verse 11 to 12. I will skip and go to verse 17 and 19. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 11 and 12. I'm reading from RSV translation, 11 to 12. It says, therefore, remember that at one time, you, the Baganda, you, the Bateso, you, the Alul, you, the Banyankore, Bachwezi, you, the Indians, you, the Chinese, in the flesh, called the uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision, which is made in the flesh by hands, remember that you were at that time separated from Christ, alienated from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers to the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. We, the Baganda, we were without God, while the Israelites had God. We were without one. Okay, I'll skip. I've gone to verse 17. And he came and preached, this God came and preached peace to you who are far off, You know, this God had two kinds of people. We, the Banyarwanda, we, the Baganda, the Banyankole, the Bachwezi, the Alul, the Ateso, we who are far off. And we have those who are near. That is verse 17. Those who are far off from this God and those who are near to this God. Okay, verse 19. So then, you are no longer strangers and sojourners, but you are fellow citizens. Fellow citizens. Oh, so we were one time non-citizens, but we had those who were already citizens with the saints and members of the household of God. I've been reading from Matthew 15:24, John 4:22, and Ephesians chapter 2, verses 11, 12, 17, and 19. And I would like to invite Reverend Tangazo back. Reverend Tangazo, Reverend Raymond, does such a God sound to you as one who was ever present with our ancestors, non-Jewish ones, non-Israelite ancestors? Do those passages sound to you as a God who was always present?
Yes, yes, they
Reverend
do.
Raymond?
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes, Raymond, we can hear you. Thank you. Please go on. Proceed.
Kakati, you see, I said earlier on that just because the Nile doesn't begin in Sudan or in Nigeria or in any countries you would wish it to begin, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. In as much as it doesn't, it's not in all those countries. And I use that analogy, inadequate as it would be, is that God in his sovereign power and wisdom has the right to start to do his plan from wherever. And I made another claim that I would want you to think about. I am a student of what you would call indigenous theology. And right now I'm teaching about world major religions in one of my classes. And I want you to examine and tell me if there is any deity that has claimed to be the source of life for the people who go to it or who worship it. All the deities are utilitarian. They only come in when there is need, but those needs are to apparently sustain life if met. But life exists, all right? Life already exists before you can meet needs. So why do I come from that, give that such a preamble? Because the existence of life, the fact that you are alive, should you be able to offer an explanation other than this God, then probably we can say he was never there where you are. But the fact that he has given you life and sustains that life, then he exists wherever you are. He doesn't send you life through packaging by some other person. No. That's why it is even not true that anyone brought God, this God, to any people group. I said it earlier in my submission. It is God who takes the Israelites to any place, even Egypt, to be a witness for him, rather than them taking him there. So this God, yes, he doesn't just sound like he's not a universal God. He's not an ethnic deity. No. I see him that, and unfortunately, because I come from a conviction, a persuasion, I only argue for that one. But I am open to say, tell me, because I'm a student of these other religions, tell me any of the other religions that has made a claim, because life is the beginning of all things. We cannot discuss utilitarianism. We cannot discuss mere benefits of having this God. And I'm not going to trivialize redemption, okay, and slavery. We cannot begin assessing this God on slavery alone. even when we know that the story of redemption in Israel is important. And if you read Exodus, the idea in Israel, in Egypt at the time, it's to help Pharaoh know this God. Because
okay, Reverend.
Yes.
Thank you. Reverend, thank you. No, Reverend. What I would like you to help us with is for you to walk us through the footsteps of the three passages. The three passages I've read.
Yes, that's what I was saying. I was beginning.
Jesus of Nazareth says he's only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And then later he says, we worship what we do not know, we the Baganda. But they, the Jews, worship what they know, because salvation is not of the Baganda, not of the from the Vavachwezi, but it is from the Jews. And then his servant, his spokesperson, mouthpiece, aka Paul of Tarsus, comes and says, we were without God, but they, he calls himself or themselves the commonwealth of God. They had the God. We did not. Yet you Christian biblical theologians say that this God has been all over where we are. But Paul of Tarsus, his mouthpiece says, no, we were without God. So does that God sound universal and representative to all the races?
You see, what I was doing earlier was to re-clarifying or restating some of the things I said earlier, that if grasped, some of these questions are actually catered for. But yes, I agree with you. And you know, when you're reading scripture, when you're reading the Bible, don't read it as many stories. You know, it's one story. It is one story. And because it's one story, there are points in that story, whether, depending on where you are, whether before or after where you are, that affirm or clarify or explain any of the things that you might have a question about. For example, what you're saying is very true. And it all reminds the listeners who are not even Jews. He said, I'm not afraid of the gospel. He's speaking to Gentiles, Romans, not afraid of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation and to those, everyone who believes, first to the Jews, then to the Gentiles. And I said it earlier on, it's okay to start with the Jews because God has the right to start somewhere if his intention is to extend to everybody. He never started the Jews and then said, I'm done. No. In fact, even before he started with the Jews, for example, when I tell people about the story of creation, before we know about Adam, the Bible says, let us make man in our image, in our own likeness, that he may have dominion over everything. Then he said in verse 27 of Genesis 1, it says, male and female, he created them. So whatever noise we make, we have to bear in mind that God doesn't wake up one day and say, I need to make a woman. No. God has already said it, that male and female. So what we don't know is that Eve is the female. Now we get to know the female. So when we see Gentiles in the story, and by Gentile referring to every nation that is not Israel, God has already mentioned them in his plan. But he begins somewhere, and that is what continues. So Jesus coming to the house of Israel, born in the tribe of Judah, it is as per God's plan and promise. And that's where it all begins. But the intention is to spread out. And you use, wait a minute, you use a very good story. Another one in John chapter 4, verse 22. That conversation with the Samaritan woman who is not entirely Gentile, but is a mixture of the Gentiles and the Jews. And the idea you worship what you do not know, that is very true. Ignorance is okay. It is a default place for many human beings. In fact, by default, that is a place where we all are. But then knowledge comes our way. And that the conversation between the woman at the well, the woman of Sychar, and Jesus is that she would get knowledge that would transform her and that she would go and tell others, come and see. And that knowledge was not only just about God, but also you can realize that she extrapolates from just encountering knowledge about God to perceiving that this could be the Messiah. which Isaiah earlier on talked about and says, he came to them and they rejected him. But there is a woman who is not Jewish who, after listening and getting this knowledge, because she had been anticipating and waiting, she comes to the conclusion, this could be the Messiah. How do I conclude? Yes, there is, and again Isaiah has already said, there is in all humans, even those who reject God and subscribe to naturalism, there is a sense of awareness of something greater than us, something greater than nature, something greater. You could call it laws of nature. You could call it, you could even theorize it. You could just think about it, because you could call it nature. You could call it Mother Earth. You know, some people use language that is very ridiculous. Mother Earth can't explain the entire universe, okay? Whatever you choose to call it, at the end of the day, you're trying to say there is something beyond us. You won't call it supernatural, but somehow in default setting, we acknowledge that is beyond all of us, metaphysical, if you would say, right? In the end, we have a story that explains the metaphysical much more coherently, sufficiently, and more compellingly than these other pockets of ethnic deities. I have to say, these are pockets of ethnic deities that are only utilitarian. You want rainfall. A God who can only create rainfall but cannot give you oxygen, cannot create your entire human system to survive, but can only give you. Yeah? That is not sufficient. A God that can give all things is the God we should be discussing.
Thank you.
Anyway,
Thank you very much.
I said much. I'll let you continue.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you, Reverend. I thank you very much. I like the way you are a defender. You are a proposer. There is a way you debate, and you're swaying us to your side. You're swaying us to your God. I like that. I just like that. Pastor White, I've just taken you through the footsteps of discourses from Matthew to John and to Ephesians, just like you heard and just like you read. As a Christian biblical theologian and biblical Christian theologian, how would you explain the principle of consistency and coherence in matters of God's universality in this matter? Because from what you've just heard, I don't think it sounded anywhere near or anywhere close to universality. It was all written on the wall that exclusivism is being shouted in those three passages. Do you concur?
No, I don't.
Why not?
Because that is not what the passages are saying.
Okay.
Neither do I concur. Okay, I agree with you, Chris.
Okay.
That's not what,
Okay.
that's
Yes,
not what
thank you. Good. Please clarify. Please clarify.
Though actually, sorry, I'm going to come in here because ngabo money sometimes need a bad look. Though exclusivity by nature is part of what God ought to be. A supreme, sovereign, almighty God ought to be exclusive by nature. And by that, it means that if he's God, then no one else is. That's what exclusivity would mean. But if you're referring to excluding other people, that is a false claim on this God. He has never made that claim.
Okay, all right.
In as much as he chose a special people, okay?
All right.
So, but exclusiveness is a nature, exclusivity is nature, is the nature of all gods. When all gods are trying to make a claim, they try to project themselves that there's no other God better than them. And that's why God in the commandments and throughout scripture, he tries to make it clear there's no other God except me. And you should worship no other God except me. In fact, he adds that I'm a jealous God. Should you worship any other? All right.
All right, Raymond. Yes, yes, Pastor White, would you please mind clarifying why you do not concur with my assertions?
Yeah, moderator, I know you're interested in us getting to those verses, but did you hear what Reverend just put across? Because I think it is very important for us to understand here. When we are discussing biblical or theological exclusivism and with the subject matter is God, we are not talking about the divine ontology.
Could you break that down, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ontology is the study. Ontology is the study of beingness.
Okay.
So, and Tangazo has just broken it down for you. In the beingness of the God, the one who has never begun, there is nothing and no God like him. He is therefore exclusive in nature, in beingness. There is nothing that is like him, and there is nothing that can ever be like him, and there is nothing that will ever be like him. He's one.
Okay.
So, those are the verses that you see in the Bible, that there is no God like you.
Okay.
In beingness. But when we come to Israel being as a chosen nation, we are now discussing relational exclusivity. And to that, we contend and say, the God who created all people in his image is not discriminative. And he has no special children and regular ones. For all have sinned and fallen away from the glory of God. For we are all created in the image of God. None of us is lesser than the other. That was the problem of racism. Because the white people at a certain point believed that they were a superior race and we were an inferior one. And it was even preached in the church history, by the way. And the same thing happens even in other ethnic groups. We, the Bahima and the Batusi, believe we are the people. The rest of you are things of God. So that kind of exclusivism, relational exclusivism, is what we are discussing about. And I need people to understand that. Now, to your verses. In Matthew chapter 20, is it chapter 26 again?
15:24.
15:24.
I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Yes.
Only.
Yes, only to the lost sheep. Now, God is re-echoing the wrong theology about him. Why? Because the Syrophoenician woman has been sent to him as a trap.
Okay.
How do I know that? It was impossible in the Jewish economy for a Gentile to access a Jewish rabbi. But this woman accessed this Jewish rabbi. It was the Pharisees that let that woman access the Jewish rabbi so that they can disqualify this guy as the Messiah. If you are the Messiah, you cannot heal our enemies. And the very Messiah now tells him, who is God himself, now corrects the theology and says, I was only sent. He's re-echoing the wrong theology about him. I was only sent to the lost sheep in Israel. And what does the woman say next?
The woman says in verse 25, but she came and knelt before him, saying, Lord, help me. And he answered, it is not fair to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. She said, yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table.
Now, statement number one, those who are not Israelites, are not human beings, are dogs. Wrong theology, part 2.
Okay, so is Jesus satirizing the wrong theology here?
Exactly, that is what he's doing, but his goal is not satire. His goal is challenging that theology before the teachers of that theology, the Pharisees and the Sadducees.
Okay.
This woman has come and set a platform where God is going to challenge the theology about him, and that is what he's doing. And there is something that he says. Number 3. Continue.
Verse 28, then Jesus answered her, O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire.
Thank you. Now, Jesus does not say that great is your biology and great is your ethnic tribe, your ethnicity. Because the theology around him by Judaism is not a theology built on faith. And yet, as far as he's concerned, he is interested in the theology built on faith, not on ethnic traits. That's why he says, great is your faith. In other words, all of you, including you Jews, you can relate with me on the terms of faith, not on the terms of your ethnic groupings. So basically, Jesus is not endorsing the wrong theology. He's actually challenging it. And what did he do next? He healed an enemy. Because so the Gentile was an enemy to the Jews, not an enemy to his God. And that is the statement that he made. So that healing of that Gentile was a statement that challenged the sitting theology of Judaism. And that is not different even from the Baganda and us. Because you all know that you believe in your ethnic groups, that you are a superior race and a superior people over others. It is the same message that this misrepresented and misunderstood God is giving to all of us, not only to the Jews, but all of us. All of us who think that we are chosen like the Jews think that they are chosen. All of us, we relate with God on terms of faith, not on terms of our ethnicity.
So in this passage from verse 21 to verse 28 of Matthew 15, you're saying this is a podium where Jesus uses it to rebut the wrong theology that had been built years before him.
Exactly.
Shall we proceed to John 4, verse 22, please?
John 4, verse 22. First of all, unlike Matthew chapter 15, there are not so many wrong things in Matthew chapter 15 as the majority wrong things in John 4.
Do you mind breaking that down? What do you mean by wrong things?
I mean, first of all, the venue is wrong.
In which context is it wrong?
It is the well of Jacob, and it is a Samaritan well.
In this culture here.
Yes, as far as the Jews are concerned. Now, Jews hated hated Gentiles, but they detested Samaritans. Because a Samaritan was a combination of a Gentile and a Jew. So that hybrid was very dangerous. Why? Because you might end up sharing a meal with him, assuming he's a fellow Jew, and yet he has the blood of a Gentile in him. That is how bad the Samaritan was. So and you see, I thank God that I was born by the Bahima and the Batusi, because where I come from, if you say a child with someone from another tribe, that child is very dangerous, because it's a combination of good and evil, and there's nothing as dangerous as that. That's the devil incarnate himself. So that is the Samaritan for you. So first of all, a Jewish rabbi is in the wrong on the wrong well, in the wrong geography. Number one. Number two, a Samaritan woman, as if that is not enough, a prostitute Samaritan woman. So God is having a conversation with a prostitute Samaritan woman on the well of Jacob. Do you know it is called the well of Jacob?
No.
Because Samaritans could not go on the same well with the Jews. So Jacob dug them a special well. And Samaritans, these were children of Jews. You could not go with that child to the temple. So they created a mountain of worship for those children. So that is why there is that mountain where they worship from. They cannot worship with us. Now, these are the people that God is involving himself with. What is God doing? If not challenging the existing theological understanding. So, that is where your verse comes from. Now, the reason what does your verse say?
You Samaritans, or you Gentiles, the Banyankore, the Bahima, and so on, worship what you do not know. We, the Jews, worship what we know. You know why? For salvation is from no other race other than the Jews.
Good. Now, what God is doing in that passage is fighting now the wrong theology of the Samaritans. Why? Because in the Samaritan Pentateuch, they have developed an anticipation of a Samaritan Messiah. So he's telling this woman that you Samaritans do not even wait for another Messiah. The Messiah is coming through your fathers, the Jews. And this is the Messiah, because the Samaritans knew that the Messiah who would come from the Jews could not accept them. And Jesus is telling the Samaritan woman, newsflash, a Jewish Messiah who accepts Samaritans like you, sinful Samaritans like you, is standing before you. And that is why now the woman runs back when you read that story and goes to the city and starts preaching to the Samaritans that have found the Messiah.
Yeah, in verse 25.
Exactly. That's why she does that, because I have found the Messiah. The Messiah has come. And he's not only the Messiah of the Jews, it is the Messiah of both the Jews and the Samaritans. That is her message in the marketplace. Very controversial. Again, God has set a platform to correct the misrepresentation of him. Do you have any other verse?
And Ephesians, Mr. Paul of Tarsus.
Paul is right. Just like the Jews never had God, the Gentiles did not have God. Paul is right. Just like the Jews never had God, the Gentiles did not have God. Or you want to know how I know it?
Yes, that's what I'm pondering.
In Acts chapter 2, when Peter preaches the Jewish Messiah, he gets converts of 3,000 people in Acts chapter 2 because he preached the Jewish Messiah, the exclusive Jewish Messiah. That's the one that he preached in Acts chapter 2. In Acts chapter 7, when Stephen preaches the inclusive Jewish Messiah, he is stoned to death. Has anyone ever asked, if Stephen and Peter were preaching the same thing, why is one stoned and the other celebrated? Well, when you read the book of Acts, you will see that Peter still has a problem to go and preach to Cornelius until he has a vision of clean and unclean. That is the harbinger to the message that he preached in Acts chapter 2. In Acts chapter 7,
take it. Don't call what I've made clean unclean. Mama, mukama namugamba lyava muzanyo gwe. Mamuzanyo.
Because to him, we the Isaiahs we are like pigs.
Raymond.
But in Acts chapter 7, Stephen preaches an inclusive Messiah. And he is stoned to death. And the first person to stone him to death was Paul. Now, my question to you, moderator, is Paul telling us that at that point of stoning Stephen, did he have God? You represent him and answer.
With zeal.
Did he have God?
With zeal, without knowledge.
Did he have God? I'm not asking what he was with. You see? So that's the problem. Later on, he's going to say that all my knowledge about this God was excrets until I met God himself. And then he goes back to his people to preach. And they eventually killed him also. So is Paul inviting people to the Jewish God? Which Jewish God that he didn't understand before? So in Ephesians, Paul is actually saying that there is no difference between a circumcised and the uncircumcised. He says that later in his episodes. Why? Because we were all lost until God came and revealed himself to us. So he preaches to the Gentiles that you drop all those gods that you think about. If I'm asking the Israel to drop the understanding of God, then how about you? You drop all that nonsense. Let's talk about this Jewish Messiah. Because God got incarnate through a Jewish skin. He was not a Jew. He's not a Jewish God. He's a universal God. And he had no option but at least to be born through a particular ethnic group. It is not that he chose Israel because Israel was greater than. That is a verse in the Bible, by the way. So there's nothing, for me, there's nothing like the Israelite chosenness. For me, there is an Israelite commissioning. They were commissioned to take this God to the ends of the world. They failed. They localized the universal God. And that's why he tells the Gentiles, you didn't know God and you had no God. How different were we from the Paul who stones Stephen? No different. Read that passage in that context and in the context of the episodes of Paul and his theology. Then you'll understand that he's not actually making Jews superior, etc. Because in Romans chapter 11, is it chapter 11? When he gets there and now starts talking about his ethnic group, he begins
9 to 11.
Yeah, that passage of 9 to 11. He begins by crying. Because he equates them with even the Gentiles and says, oh God, I wish my people do understand these things, because they have the zeal, but not in the knowledge. So do they know God? They fit into that whole thing. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us today. I don't know, it's been quite a silent one today. I don't know what could have caused that, but I want to hope that you have picked something. I think you have followed. We don't invite you to agree with everything you've heard today. We all invite you to investigate, because literature is there, discourses are there, and you have also personal encounters and experiences with the God who created humanity, the God who created the heavens and the earth. So I invite you to be in relationship with him, continue cooperating with him, and probably you'll get to know whether he is universal or he is exclusive, and what it means to be universal, what it means to be inclusive. We think that as you continue relating and cooperating with this God, definitely and eventually you'll get to know how universal or how exclusive he might have been. Thank you very much. May God bless, keep, and protect you. This has been In Truth and in Spirit World of Worship Fellowship. Does the world, or did the world, have God without Israel? Or without Israel, do we have God? Did we have God? That has been the crux of the matter. If you listen to us now or later, please give us feedback on the numbers which will be reflected on your screen on YouTube. Please get back to us, and if you do, we shall be glad. Or you might join us really physically every Saturday at Twin Towers Inspire Cafe, as long as it is still 2025. You might be listening to us 20 years from now. I don't know where we are right now, 20 years from now. But the Lord is always the Lord. Only Christ Jesus and him alone saves. Good night and bye-bye.